Hi guys. So we'll be starting with today's fortnightly weekly legal scoop, and we'll be covering the session for the month of May. Initial 10 to 12 days, what all has happened in the legal world. We'll be discussing this today. So let's start. Justice TS Sivagnanam appointed as the Chief Justice of Calcutta High Court. Now, every month we see that there are certain appointments, and these appointments are important as it is an important appointment with terms of the High Court because the Chief Justice is getting appointment. So, as we know the hierarchy, that there are district courts, then there are high courts, and then there is a Supreme Court. So the head of the High Court is called as a Chief Justice. So we have got a new Chief Justice for the Calcutta High Court. So central government have notified this appointment. So usually, although when we have an appointment of the justices, we have a committee called collegium. So this collegium is made by the Supreme Court. However, the collegium committee, after deciding the names, recommends it to the government, central government. Then the government notifies whether the judge has to be appointed or not. So in the previous times, we have seen that there have been a crisis between the government and the judiciary that whom to be appointed, whom to be made as a judge. So this has been dealt by the central government right now, and they have notified this appointment. So Justice Sivagnanam has been serving as the acting Chief Justice of the High Court since March 31. So from 2021, 2023, March 31, he has been acting as a acting Chief Justice. So acting Chief Justice is a term which has been given in the Constitution also. So whenever a Chief Justice is not present in the High Court, so another judge will be appointed as the acting Chief Justice. So this has been done, and he has been serving as the acting Chief Justice. Then Supreme Court Collegium, as I just mentioned, that collegium is a body of the judges, senior most judges of the Supreme Court. They recommended the name of Justice Sivagnanam for the appointment of Chief Justice. Justice Sivagnanam has took birth in September 16, 1963, and he started his practice back in 1986. So he was initially appointed as an additional judge of Madras High Court. So he started his career from the Madras High Court as in a career of judgeship, and then in 2009 he got entry in the Madras High Court, and later on he became a permanent judge in 2011. Then he was transferred to the Calcutta High Court in 2021, and then now he has become the Chief Justice in 2023, and he will serve for the next 2 years, which is up to 2025. First deaf lawyer clears AIBE. So AIBE is an acronym for All India Bar Examination. So Saudamini Pethe. So Saudamini Pethe was the first deaf lawyer who enrolled with the Bar Council, and she recently cleared the All India Bar Examination. But unfortunately, what happened is that she had been facing certain issues, and because of which she left her body. And that's why, like, since the result came after a week, she passed away. And this was a very historic moment when we got deaf lawyer, right? So Supreme Court believes that we should be more inclusive. We should give opportunity to every set of people, and in that move, the Delhi High Court also approved her to give the examination of bar, and she cleared it, which was a historic moment that we had this kind of lawyer. She was recognized for her activism on the challenges faced by the deaf community. It was her vision as a lawyer to bridge the lag between the deaf and those who can hear. So now she played a very active role in balancing the situation where the deaf community is facing issue with respect to the involvement in this particular area. And being a lawyer, she was trying to fill this gap so that this community can also be represented in the society. And even she made a very successful attempt, and but she couldn't survive. Then Delhi government versus Lieutenant Governor. So this is a very prominent issue, and this has a history. So as you all know that Delhi is not a state. So we call Delhi a union territory. Delhi is called as a union territory. Now, we are aware that every state has a government, right? Every state comes with a government because people participate in the voting procedures and they select their own government, which works for the people of the state. Now, all of the daily affairs matter is dealt by the government in every other state we see. But Delhi is the capital of our country and the system is quite different here. Now, what is the difference? The difference is that the Delhi, although is not a state, but still have a government. And this type of system we have not seen in any other union territories in the country. So usually union territories are controlled by the central government. These are not controlled by the state government. These union territories do not see any kind of voting procedures in the territory, and it is controlled by a officer called Lieutenant Governor. So Lieutenant Governor is the one who is appointed by the central government. So now the very basic thing which we should know is the difference between the central government and the state government. So, in this regard, our constitution delineates a boundary between the powers of the central government and the state government. So, this has been given in the seventh schedule of the Indian constitution. And in that schedule, it has been given that what are the different kinds of power with which the central government can play and with which the state government can play. And these powers have been differentiated in three lists. So there are three lists which have been given in the our constitution, seventh schedule. It is called as list 1, list 2, and list 3. So now the list 1 consists of the powers which should be exclusively dealt by the union government. Then comes the list 2. List 2 contains the power which will be exclusively dealt by the state government. We call it as a state list. We call list 1 as a union list. Then comes list 3, which is called as a concurrent list. So the concurrent list, we mean that the both state and the union government can interfere. So there are certain issues in which both the governments can interfere. But when we talk about the daily affairs of the state, like collecting taxes, education, so these are the areas where the state do have a power to deal with, and there are certain areas where the union has the power. So you might have seen that your state have some of the national highways, right? Our states do have, every states do have a national highway, because national highway is nothing but connecting few of the states together. So even though the national highway is in your state, but that is not controlled by the state government and rather by the central government. So like this, there are certain issues and there are certain policy areas which are exclusively dealt by the state government and some dealt by the central government. Now, this is the fundamental background of this particular case. And why I have explained this, because it is a very, very prominent one and it is a very high probability that it might come in your examinations. So please understand this very sharply, because it is of utmost important. And why it is of utmost important? Because this has been this case has been running from past few years. And finally, the judgment has come, and it is a landmark judgment, because it will be changing the structure of the democracy, how democracy should exist. So as we know that democracy means that we elect the government, we choose who will rule over us, right? We pay taxes to the government. The tax is collected by the government and should be utilized for the benefit of the people. And that is why we select a government which will, benefit us, make policies for us, make beneficial measures for us. So that is why existence of a government in the state is very prominent. Now, back in 2018, this issue arose, and pertaining to that issue, the judgment has come in this first week of the May, where Supreme Court had held that Delhi government will have all the control over all the services in the national capital. So the whole service area, whole service sector will be controlled by the Delhi government, including the Indian Administrative Service. So IAS officers are appointed by the union government, but still the state government will be authorized to handle them. So as we discussed that all the services will be handled by the government. So that is why IAS is also included in that. Now there are three exceptions which have been put over here. Those are land, police, and law and order. So land, police, law and order are the three areas where the central government will be given the charge. Why? Because of the very prominent reason that police is responsible for assuring the security. And Delhi is a place where our parliament exists, our whole MPs and MLAs exist. So that is why the security cannot be given out in the hands of the state government, because there might be a difference of ideology amongst the parties. So that is why, pertaining to this specific security issue, the police has been kept under the central government, because they need to ensure the security of each and everyone out there, specifically the governmental authorities, the governmental bodies. We have Supreme Court, we have Delhi High Court, and we have number of embassies, we have World Bank, we have all the important international institutions stationed at the Delhi. So because of that, the security is of the utmost concern, and that is why police is in the hand of central government. And likewise, land is also in the hand of central government, because of the land is the central land. It is a national, it's a capital land. So all the dealings shall be done by the central government in order to avoid any miscommunication or any mishappening from the side of state government, because we know that whenever there is a difference in the political parties of the different government, the issue arises, right? So we want to, you might have seen that one party is trying to bring a bad name to the another party. So which about this specifically we'll be dealing in our next slide. This is about that. So, but we have seen this, that in any political structure, one party tries to bring a bad name to the another party. But in the case of Delhi, if we will try to do so, you will be bringing a bad name to the country and not to the party, because it's a national capital, right? So as I mentioned that a lot of embassies are stationed there. If anything wrong happened to the embassy, People will not say that it was the fault of Aam Aadmi Party or it was the fault of the Bharatiya Janata Party, but people will say that it was the failure of the Indian government. It was the failure of the Indian land. So that is why, to avoid that thing, it is very important that land, police, law, and order shall be given to the central government so that a maximum surety can be given. Law and order is another important segment because oftentimes we have seen that being in this national territory, we face a lot of issue where different kinds of protests take place, where different kinds of rallies take place, and in order to control that, an immediate order is needed, and immediate control is needed. So even though if we give police to the state government, not all of the police authorities are under the state government, and the time gap in the communication between the state government and the central government will cost the lives of many people. In such situation where we need the interruption or we need the involvement of the police at the earliest. So because of that, it has been given to one authority so that all the, like, we have paramilitary forces, we have military forces, we have anti-national squad forces. So like this, we have a lot of different squads, different forces. If all of this will be placed under the one head, it will be very easy to control and to use them whenever required. So that is why these three things have been given to the central government and rest of the services have been given to the state government. Now, you might be thinking that it is all about state government versus central government. Then from where the lieutenant governor comes into the picture? Now, it is important to note that even though all of the states we know, all of the states we see, do have the state government which is headed by a chief minister of the state, but yet they also have a head of the state called as governor. So we do have a head of the country which we called as the president, and similarly, the head of the state is called as governor because these are the heads of the executive domain of our country. So we have three segments. One is legislature, one is executive, and one is judiciary. So the head of the executive is president, and in state, the head of the executive is governor. And that is why Delhi as a union territory also has a similar position called as a lieutenant governor. So lieutenant governor is are the officers who are from the Indian administrative sorry, who are from the Indian Administrative Services or from the any other high-end civil services position. So that is why they have been delineated by the central government to overlook the management and the administration of the state. Now, in this judgment, we had the constitution bench. So whenever we say constitution bench, it means the judges, five judges sitting on the bench. So any bench. So all the judgment comes when a bench of judges sit and decide together. So it starts with a minimum of single judge, which we call, of course, single judge, single bench. When there are two judges, we call them as a division bench. Either two or either three judges, we call them as a division bench. And whenever there are five judges or more than five judges, we call it as a constitution bench. So in this judgment also, constitution bench was there, which was headed by our Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud. And along with that, Justices M.R. Shah, Krishna Murari, Hima Kohli, and P.S. Narasimha. So these are the five judges who were there in the bench, and they held that the legislative power of NCT Delhi under entry 41 would extend to IAS, and it shall control them even if they are not recruited by the NCT Delhi. So recruitment of the IAS officers are even done by the state governments also, but even though if they are not recruited, they will be able to take charge of the government. So as I mentioned that this case started in 2018. This case arose in 2018 when at that point of time our constitution bench of the Supreme Court interpreted Article 239 AA of the constitution, and this specific article is having some special provisions with respect to the national capital territory. So we call Delhi in official language as National Capital Territory. Now, when the court gave this judgment, court also gave the reasoning behind this judgment, that how are they going to justify that the Delhi government is a rightful, Delhi government might have a rightful ownership over the services affair of the state. So they mentioned that Lieutenant Governor shall exercise powers under the administrative role as entrusted by the President. So there are certain executive powers, and this particular role will be given to the Lieutenant Governor by the President. And now those particular matters which are given to the Lieutenant Governor, these are the specific matters which are outside the scope of legislative assembly. So legislative assembly of every state decides or makes a law, makes the policies. So whenever something which is out of the scope of the legislative assembly, so that will be dealt by the Lieutenant Governor. Otherwise, the purpose of having a separate elected body in Delhi will be rendered futile. So this is a very important point. Now, why this has to be kept in a primary consideration? Because when we elect someone, so for example, if anyone from you, in anyone of you are from Delhi, so you might have seen that you have elected a government, you have elected one politician because you have a trust over him, you have a trust over the party. Now if that trust is not there, you will definitely not vote for the particular person. So that is how we represent or we showcase our trust with the particular party. And now if that thing, even after selected our own person, we are getting ruled by someone else, so that will create a sense of doubt in the citizen with respect to the system of democracy. So since we have been following this system of democracy, the structure of democracy, it is very, very important that we should keep the culture of democracy intact. And that is why the majority of the matters shall be dealt by the legislative assembly, which is nothing but the elected representatives of the government. Democratically elected government shall have control over its officers. If a democratically elected government is not allowed to control its officers and hold them to account, then its responsibility towards the legislature and public is diluted. So see, what happens is that we might have seen there are different kinds of parties in the state, and whenever one party is not doing good or something bad is happening, we did see that different kinds of allegations are pop up in the legislative assembly. They have been questioned that why this security breach has taken place. So for example, in a very significant incident when the Taj Hotel in the Bombay was attacked, was under a terrorist operation, that had been questioned in the legislative assembly, that had been questioned in the parliament, that how such big breach of security has taken place, how a group of terrorists has entered into such a prime hotel, such an important hotel in such an important area of our country. So these kinds of questions are dealt in the legislative assembly. It is important because it is the duty of the elected government to provide us the security, to provide us the peace. And if that does not happen, at least the question can be filed or shoot against them that why this has happened, right? So that people, because it's a people's government, people will have a right to cross question, to check, and if not, they will select their vote next time very carefully. So that is why this is very important to ensure that the democratic structure or the democratic procedures are being followed. If officers are not responding to the government, the collective responsibility is diluted. If officers feel they are insulated from the elected government, they feel they are not accountable. So now, since the officers are a part of the government and if they are not held responsible, it will be proved to be a bad mark. So that is why it is important that both government and officers of the government should work in line so that the proper administration can be done. Because if the state government will not be given the charge, the trust will be at stake. Now again we have this very prominent and very important and landmark political crisis which we have recently seen. If someone is from Maharashtra and watching this, you must be knowing about what divide we have seen amongst the fractions of the political party and all of it, how all of it got started. So we are discussing about the political crisis where the government of Thackeray government from the Shiv Sena have been broke, and Eknath Shinde along with the 40 members joined BJP later on. So since Shiv Sena won the election, they formed the government. Uddhav Thackeray became the chief minister of the state, and then the Eknath Shinde and along with the other 40 members, they went to the BJP and the matter started. So they declared that they are no more part of the Shiv Sena and they want to form their own separate government. So because of this, it is important to understand that how different political parties work and what is their nature and how do they work. So we have recently, so the Supreme Court gave the decision that the decision of the Maharashtra Governor Bhagat Singh Koshyari to call for a floor test based on the request of 34 MLAs of the Eknath Shinde faction was incorrect, since Koshyari did not have enough objective material before him to conclude that the then Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray had lost the confidence. Right? So now the problem is that the governor decided to call the flow test. Now government, what happens is that governor is not entitled to enter into the political area. So because governor responsibilities is absolutely different, as we just discussed in the previous slide, that how a governor is bound to do certain other tasks, and that is why governor should maintain a distance with the political party, because we discussed that governor is an executive authority whereas the political parties are part of the legislature. So in that particular case, governor should not have interfered, and that is what the court is also declaring here, that the governor of that time, Bhagat Singh Koshyari, he called for the floor test. And when he called for the floor test, he did not have enough material to conclude whether actually the chief minister have lost the confidence or not. So now it is important to understand that what is a floor test. So the floor test is that you need to prove your credibility on the floor. So the house of the legislative assembly is also called as the floor, because in that particular area we prove our confidence, right? So now to have a floor test means that all of the MLAs who have been selected from the different constituencies and who are belonging to the same party will affirm that the particular chief minister is actually capable or not, or he actually have the confidence of the house or not. So whenever there is such kind of issues where the parties are not able to form the government, or when there are very clear cut proofs or clear cut materials to show that that the chief minister did not have the proper confidence in the house, then the governor can take a decision to call the floor test and to check the credibility of the chief minister. But in this present scenario, it has been shown that the governor did not have the sufficient proof that he had called the floor test. Now again, we had the Constitution bench in this case, again led by the Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, CJI. So you should remember the name of at least CJI, because he is heading the our whole bench. Justice M.R. Shah, Krishna Murari, Hima Kohli, and T.S. Narasimha. So they say that now, since the act of governor was wrong, so had the governor not called the floor test, the Uddhav Thackeray would not have resigned and he would have continued as the chief minister of the Maharashtra. But now the one thing which Uddhav Thackeray did wrong was he resigned, because he knew that the 40 members have left the party, so he will definitely lose the floor test. And to have this on face, losing the test on the face, he thought that resigning is a better option. And since he resigned and it was not following the result of the call of governor, Supreme Court said that we cannot restore the position. Had Thackeray sustained the floor test and then losing it, today the Supreme Court had an authority to reinstate Uddhav Thackeray as a chief minister, because the order of the governor was invalid, it was unconstitutional. But just because Uddhav Thackeray did not even face the floor test and resigned beforehand only, it is impossible and it cannot be restored. So then Supreme Court substantiated that there are always disagreements and dissents within a political party, and there has to be a proper remedial structure. There are remedial structure that how the dispute between the political party will be resolved. But in any case, in the dispute between the state government, different parties of the state, the governor should not interfere, because we have a separate function of each organs. As I just mentioned that we have three organs: legislature, executive, and judiciary. So the respect of the separation of power must be there, so that nobody is overlapping in the other's organ. So that is why the court is specifically saying over here that the governor should not have interfered. Then court has given one statement which I have put as it is. I'll read it. Neither the constitution nor the laws enacted by the parliament provide for a mechanism by which disputes amongst members of a particular political party can be settled. They certainly do not empower the governor to enter the political arena and play a role. So this is a very important line where Supreme Court is emphasizing that although there is no specific mechanism by which the dispute of a particular political party or particular set of disputes can be resolved, but in any of such cases, it nowhere empowers the government to enter the political arena and play that role. So it is always up to the legislature body that they need to take care of this thing, that how to resolve a dispute, but not an executive authority who will enter this particular issue. So that is how Supreme Court ended their judgment, and they say that they cannot quash a resignation, because it is another important feature over here is that the resignation of Uddhav Thackeray was voluntarily. So the voluntary word has been used by the court, that there was a voluntary resignation of the Uddhav Thackeray. So had Uddhav Thackeray refrained from resigning, so this court would have definitely reinstated the government. But just at that point of time, seeing the obvious course of actions in the future, Thackeray thought that it is wise to resign rather than facing the floor test and losing on the face of the people. So this was the whole Maharashtra political crisis, which was going from last few years, and now it has come to an end, and the government of Eknath Shinde along with Devendra Fadnavis is held to be constitutional now. Fundamental duty of police. In a very saddening event which has happened in the Kerala High Court given a very prominent remark which is outlining the fundamental duty of police. So it has so happened that there was a medical examination going on of a accused. So what happens is that whenever any crime happens, so we have our criminal procedure code. So our criminal procedure code outlines different procedure, that what will be the procedure whenever any crime takes place. So for different crimes, different kinds of medical examinations have been prescribed. So all of those medical examinations has to be done under the guidance of the police itself. And in this particular case, what happened is that after this crime, the medical examination has to be conducted, and police took the convicted person accused under their custody. But during the examination, the accused and the surgeon was alone in the room. And in that case, the Dr. Vandana Das, who was just a 23-year-old doctor, she was being stabbed by a man. The accused person who has been brought there for the medical examination, he stabbed that Dr. Vandana, right? And then this issue has been brought to the court, which is a sort of a shameful incident, because in the presence of police, even the citizen is not safe. So it is a big question on the police, that from where the person has got the instrument, or the police might have looked over the medical room where the examination has been going on, and the Kerala High Court has declared it as a systematic failure. Systemic failure. So systemic failure means that it is a failure of the system, where police, who is fundamentally responsible for giving the protection or enhancing the protection of the citizens who are dependent upon this particular institution. So like, why all of us feel safe and comfortable at our own places, because we know that the police is there to help us. Sorry. Now, that is why the Kerala High Court has pronounced this judgment. They have said that police officers need to be very careful, and a very strong line has been stated by the Kerala High Court, which I'll read. The police officers above were also added that it is the fundamental duty of any officer to guard a citizen even at the cost of their own lives. So we have seen this attitude of our military men who even put their own lives at stake just to protect our lives, just to protect the citizen of the country. Similar attitude has to be adopted by the police officers, that just in order to safeguard the lives of the citizen, they can put their own lives at stake. So that is what the nature of their duty is. But in any case, they shouldn't fail to provide proper security and safety to the citizens. Then Supreme Court has launched new e-filing software. This is a very welcoming move where Supreme Court has launched this software. Now, filing means that whenever any petition or case has to be filed in the Supreme Court, earlier it was all offline. It was a pen paper thing that has to be done in an offline manner. So earlier this month, only court started with the testing versions, and they did a crowd testing, and now it has successfully passed the test, and now this software has been released. It will now enable the litigants and the advocate to file case applications, documents, court fees, and every other things will be done by being online, right? So it will become very easier now, as we have always heard that the getting justice or seeking justice is very tough, because we need to go through a lot of lengthy procedures in the court. Now that has been reduced because of the online system. So the old e-filing software will be discontinued from the 22nd July. Meanwhile, all of the system will be upgraded. The training programs will be conducted. The proper awareness program will be conducted, so that every litigant and every advocate shall be made well versed with the software, so that they can use it properly. With this, we have come to an end of the session, and hope you guys have liked it and it is of some use to you. If anyone has any doubt, please write down in the comments, and I will take it. Okay, so we'll end this session and we'll see you in the next week. Thank you.